Hey, what's up guys? My name is Cherno. Welcome back to another Hazel Dev Log. I'm standing today because what can I say? I am excited. Also kind of inspired by Randy with the whole standing thing. If you guys have not seen the latest Cherno podcast, by the way, I'll have it linked up there. You can also listen to it on Spotify if you want to clean the house while listening to a podcast like I do all the time. So why am I so excited today? I mean, how exciting could UI possibly be? Well, turns out pretty exciting. So up until now, we have not had any like UI capabilities in Hazel itself. Like obviously the editor UI exists, like all the buttons, all the kind of text that you see on the screen, all the panels, all of that is done through IMGUI. And that's all great, but for in-game UI, meaning like if you actually make and ship a game and you want it to have any kind of user interface, not just like HUD elements, but also like a menu screen and maybe like a score kind of somewhere. You want text rendering, you want layouts, you want all of this complex kind of behavior. If you want more information about what really kind of falls into the UI category of a game engine, then definitely check out the Let's Talk video I made recently. I'll have it linked up there as well. That is basically covering everything in a 2D game engine. And of course, UI isn't just for a 2D game engine, it's also very necessary for a 3D game engine. So on Sunday, I had a full week of like actual development work for Hazel planned out. Lots of exciting and also non-exciting things that just have to be done as far as the engine goes. But on Sunday, I was like, you know what, I'd really like to be able to render some text. How hard could that be? Now, for those of you who haven't done any kind of text rendering, I'll probably get deeper into the technical details of that when we actually start doing that for Hazel 2D for the game engine series, because I'm going to have to implement all of that. But long story short, it is fairly complicated. And I mean, there's two parts to it. There's physically rendering the characters of text, but then you also have to like know where to render them, make all of the kind of geometry on which you're going to render like those actual characters, know how far to advance the characters, all these like font metrics things, but then also like layout and like, you know, do you want to like left align your text, right align your text? So UI in general is very complex, and I haven't really gotten to that stage yet in what I've implemented here so far, but the text rendering is basically in. There's a few different ways to actually physically get those characters like on the screen. I mean, I think early, like back in the day, they used to make like a font atlas, like a sprite sheet, basically like a texture atlas of just different characters that were like in an image file. So you could kind of use basically Photoshop or Paint or whatever to just like write the letter A, B, C, D, E, put them all into like one sheet. I mean, you could even have them as separate textures if you really wanted to. Maybe have like a pixel rasterizer kind of software-based renderer, and that way like different textures wouldn't really be the biggest like problem in the world. Whereas obviously with OpenGL and with like DirectX, with Vulkan, all of the GPU rendering APIs, we prefer to like minimize the amount of textures we have, so we pack many characters into like one texture and create like a texture atlas. But ultimately you could do that, and then when you want to render like a particular character, you just look at the texture, you find the sub-region in the texture that you need for a particular character, so you get those texture coordinates, and then you just render a quad that is, you know, appropriately sized basically with those texture coordinates, and you have your character. So that's like kind of phase one. Phase two is reading a font file instead of that. So if you read a font file, you can dynamically create that texture. You don't have to do that offline in Photoshop or Paint. You can just kind of, you know, load a font and then be like, I want these characters. Maybe I want to render like the text Cherno on the screen. So I need like a capital C, then H-E-R-N-O, right? Those are the characters I need. I can request that from the font file, which contains like mathematical kind of, you know, curves that define those shapes. And then I need to rasterize them into pixels, which I can then store in my texture. I need to record like where I store each character so that I can then retrieve those texture coordinates. And then there you go, I can render my textured quads again. This is turning into a bit of a font tutorial. Anyway, long story short, the previous method that I kind of just mentioned, it's not bad, like it's fine. But the problem is it's kind of common for you to want a little bit more information about the actual font characters, not just for like, you know, doing various effects. Like if I want to add like an outline or a glow or a drop shadow or something like that. But like even for something as simple as I want to be able to render my font at different sizes. If you just have a rasterized like glyph, then you can't really scale it up. It's going to get blurry around the edges, or it's going to be all pixely. I mean, think of scaling an image up in Photoshop. If it's like, I don't know if you guys even use Photoshop, but if it's like a smart object or if it's something in Illustrator, you can scale it up to any resolution because it's all kind of mathematical. But then if you rasterize it and it's just pixels, scaling it up is a nightmare. So it's still not kind of ideal. Enter signed distance fields, SDFs. Oh, they're just so good. They basically allow us to store a little bit more information about the actual glyph that we're rendering, not just like here are the rasterized pixels, but also kind of which way they head in, so that we have an idea of like expanding outwards in a particular direction. And by doing that, we have the ability to, well, basically scale it up to any size, because when we actually physically work out which pixels to render, which pixels should be part of the glyph, which pixels should be fully transparent, and maybe even a bit of anti-aliasing to kind of make it smoother as it fades from being in the glyph to being not in the glyph, when we actually render that textured quad, we can do all of that in a pixel shader, in a fragment shader, instead of having to like rasterize the already kind of ready to go pixels up front. And that in general is so powerful, as I'm about to show you in a minute. Now, did I write all of these like sign distance field functions and like generating those sign distance field kind of textures from font files and doing all that? No, I did not. Instead, I use this brilliant library by Chlumsky called MSDF Gen. This is absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's a multi-channel sign distance field generator. He's got various kind of different ways of generating distance fields. So there's actually quite a few options. I'm not sure if this describes it all, but if you actually go through like the documentation, the source code, all of that, you'll see all the different like types of like sign distance field glyphs it can actually generate. It basically can also pack that into textures for you. There's another repository he's got, I think it's just up here, called MSDF Atlas Gen, which actually will generate an atlas like this. Oh, here we go. Here you can see like the different kind of, you can have just a normal hard mask, you can have a soft mask, SDF, PSDF, MSDF, so like with multiple channels and stuff like that, and an MTSDF. Like there's a lot of kind of work that's gone into it. I think he actually did this for like his thesis or something like that, for a master's degree or even like a PhD or something. So it's really cool. It's MIT licensed. So of course it's absolutely amazing. So this is what I have been using to make all of that stuff happen inside Hazel. Now at the moment, this stuff is all working in Hazel, like in Hazel 3D and in patreon.com/the Hazel. But eventually this is like a great example of the kind of stuff that will make it back into the game engine series, into Hazel 2D, because of course it's very much necessary to also implement in a 2D game engine. You want text rendering in any engine, really. But the great thing about this, again, is just the level of quality you can achieve from text rendering. I mean, it's really satisfying to get really nice, crisp text rendering, especially, you know, this is especially important, I would say, not even for UI, but if you want text to be in your 3D game world. Because if that's the case, then what if the camera walks up to the text, like, and crashes into the wall and is reading it like this close, you know? Like, you're going to need a gigantic font size. And if that's like pre-rasterized, that's going to be an absolute nightmare. Anyway, but that's not all. Our audio guy, Jaroslav, I've talked about him before because he was kind enough to just introduce a brilliant audio system into Hazel. He has decided to completely redo Hazelnut's UI. Yep. Our audio guy. I'm beginning to think he's secretly interested in UI, but is just too ashamed to admit it or something like that. Anyway, long story short, Hazelnut looks absolutely incredible now. So those are the two things I want to show you. I want to show you what I've done so far over the last 3 days. I've only spent like 2 or 3 days on this font stuff. Nowhere near done like with the UI side and the UI system of Hazel, so to speak. But I'll show you what I've done, and we can also take a look at the absolutely amazing new Hazelnut UI. So coming in over here, this is what we're greeted with. I've got just like a blank project running. Let's get rid of this. So everything you see here, has basically been kind of done from the ground up. I mean, even things like these beautiful shadows you see here, like the attention to detail here is absolutely like amazing. I wouldn't expect anything less from Jay, because he's just such a great kind of, I don't know, engineer, artist, audio, musician, person. But basically, like, this is kind of the look that we see here. It's all kind of, it all works as you would kind of expect it to work. We have like this custom title bar. It says like the name of the project up here. I'm not sure if you could see that before because of the face cam. I'm trying to kind of keep it, visible. But this is basically what it looks like now. The scene hierarchy has also been completely redone, as we'll see as we start to create some text elements. So how does this work? Well, we can just create text just by doing this. But another way, obviously, is if we create an empty entity. I've integrated this with the entity component system. So I was going to just do it for like 2D kind of UI and stuff like that first, but I don't know why. I just decided, you know what, let's just chuck it in like into like the 3D world as if it's like an entity and already like so that we can use it in projects in games. Because for a while now, I've wanted to be able to like annotate scenes. And you'll see how I've done that in a minute here. But basically, if we make an empty entity and then we can add a text component to it, and that will just add this thing here. Now, of course, it isn't in 3D space like this. We've got a few options here. And again, this is like a couple of days of work, so I'm sure I will add more stuff, like, you know, outline options and whatever. But basically at the moment, we've got like this kind of multi-line text entry where, you know, I could just type in like, hello, my name, and I can hit enter, is Cherno if I wanted to drop down, or I can just write it all on one line like that. I've got a few other controls that I can play with, such as color. So I can, you know, change the color of this, make it whatever I want. There's line spacing, which you'll see in a minute. Kerning, which of course is just like the kind of horizontal distance between characters. And then you kind of saw it take effect there. We have a max width as well. So it's actually in meters. It's how much text we're allowing to fit onto like one, I guess, horizontal line. So if you reduce this, then it's going to basically try and drop down words. Of course, if it's too small, then, well, it can't do anything. But there we go, right? We can kind of create like the beginnings of a layout with this. So that was fun to do. And actually 0 is definitely should not be the default. And then line spacing is the vertical distance that we have between lines. If I hide the grid here. So if I play with line spacing, you can see I can just play with how the text kind of lines up like that, which is pretty cool. So this is basically the initial set of tools that we have. Oh, and of course we can like reduce the alpha. It's all kind of blendy, which is really hard to see. But if I maybe make a skylight or something, you can see how it's kind of blending in with the background there, as opposed to being like solid white like this. Now, what about font size, I hear you ask? What font size? There is no font size. If you want bigger font, you just scale it up. And you can see as I'm doing this, that there is absolute, like, it's just sharp. Like it's just going to be sharp because of the way that it's rendered. So it's really, really cool to kind of have this. Like I just love this stuff so much because it's just, you know, it's not even like me as an engineer being like, this is just so cool. It's me as like a user of this being like, wow, I don't have to consider font sizes. Like it's just great, honestly. So let's kind of grab this and scale it down again. What else is there? Okay, yeah, so like what about like stress testing it a little bit? There is so much stuff I want to do for optimization. Again, this is just like early days, but if I get like some kind of like lorem ipsum kind of generator, let's copy like this massive paragraph here from my other monitor and just chuck it in here. Maybe let's make the max width a bit larger. Then you can see like, I mean, this is huge and it's obviously still running at 60 FPS. It's very smooth, but can I even like fly faster? Here we go. There's a bunch of text here, right? So in terms of the way that it's rendering, it is very fast. I don't think you're ever going to need this much text on the screen, especially because we don't have any kind of culling, right? There's no camera kind of frustum culling or anything like that. There's the end. It's actually all being rendered every frame, which is a little bit dumb, but that's kind of what we have. I wish there was a way to reset. Actually, if I just hit F, there we go. I can focus back on the top. Yeah, so that's what we have at the moment. Oh, and finally, you can also change the font. Right, so I've got a font here. This is just like some kind of handwriting font. I can just drag that in over here, and it will actually generate those. It will actually generate like an MSDF texture file on the fly, and that's what we see here. But you know, if you want it to be like, you know, what's the process of adding a new font? Well, let me show you. It's really easy. I'll just right click, go show in Explorer. This is the actual like location of this TTF file. Then if I go to see Windows fonts, I can find a font that I like, such as, well, let's go with, what's like a cool font? What's a cool font file? I feel like I have barely any fonts on this computer. I did wipe it recently, actually. Okay, let's just go with like some kind of monospace cool one, like Consolis maybe. Let's go ahead and copy that, paste it in here. Whoa, lots of TTF files. We can go with like a nice, I think this is an italics one. Yeah, sure, let's go with this one. So if I come back here, hit refresh, drag this one in here, and then you can see now I'm dealing with that new font, right? So the workflow is really quick, of course. This is stored as an asset, as like a font asset inside Hazel, so we can access it that way. I'm kind of running out of things to say. So use cases for this, I mean, apart from just I want text in my scene in my game, If I go and open like another scene file here, so let's go ahead and check out the prefab sandbox, because I added some stuff to that. Oh wow, the camera doesn't seem to to reset or anything, but you can see that in this scene, like I've been able to write some text, and then for people who actually open this stuff up, you can see like a little bit of a description. So once you hit play, you can left click to shoot glowing green cubes. If we actually do hit play, you can actually see that obviously this text exists in the game world. Now it's not rendered, it's actually rendered later, like after all of the passes. So it's not affected by bloom, it's not affected by lighting at all. This is like a separate 2D pass that's done as like kind of, well, in like deep in the Hazel code, it's like done during the external compositing pass. So that's where you can kind of overlay elements. I've done it there so far. It is still depth tested and everything because it uses the actual depth buffer from the main geometry pass, but it just kind of composites on top of the final kind of color buffer of our scene. So that's kind of technically where it sits in the pipeline, which means that, yeah, it doesn't like, it's not gonna, you know, it's not going to be in front of like certain things, right? Whoa, I need to be careful. If you hit a green cube with the green cube, like if the two green cubes collide, then they release those kind of orange, orange things. Let's see if I can make that happen. There we go. Anyway, so point being, you know, it's nice to be able to kind of annotate scenes and just like show different effects, maybe different materials, like, hey, this is an emissive material, these are the parameters. I've wanted to do this for a while. I think it's great for people using like the engine and trying to learn and stuff like that, but also just, I guess, for fun. And also you'll notice if you're cool that we don't just support English. So if I was to make well, let's just duplicate this prefab sandbox one. If I, which one is it? This one. I can just go ahead and like, let me just type like Privyet or something. I can type in, you know, in this case, Cyrillic kind of characters. So Russian in this case. What else? We've got some wild characters in Russian. Where's the U? U is a personal favorite. No, my favorite one is Ya, obviously, because that's the first character of my name. Yor as well. We have like an umlaut. On the E here. Yeah, so we kind of support all of that. There's even, I'll put like a screenshot of Japanese as well. It's just that a lot of fonts don't actually support Japanese glyphs, like they just don't have them. So you need to have like a special font file that actually supports Japanese glyphs, which I don't have at the moment. But yeah, that's basically like, I guess, everything that I've done in terms of fonts at the moment. So the next step is probably going to be doing it actually like in screen space, in 2D space, instead of just in like a 3D world like that. It's very, very similar with how it's rendered. There's some extra kind of math that happens to determine like how these distance fields should actually get rendered, you know, if they're in 3D space, because it's not like a constant kind of, I guess, distance from the camera. It's kind of, you know, variable, like not even just the distance, but like if you look at it at an angle like this as well. So there's like a bunch of like math. It's very simple that needs to happen. Actually, there's some examples in the MSDF repository that I mentioned. I'll have that linked in the description below in case you guys also want to kind of take this and integrate it into your engine. Again, I got this stuff working and to this kind of pretty much polished state. It's been pushed to the master branch yesterday. So it's actually all kind of there for you guys who do have access to Hazel to check out. I got to that state in like 2 days. So it's really quick. I have done font stuff before in the past throughout my life. So I'm aware of like how it should work. And obviously we have like a, you know, a batch renderer in Hazel and all of that stuff, support for multiple textures. So we can actually support multiple fonts all being rendered in a single batch if we need to. In fact, let's kind of test that. I mean, you guys get the point. I don't know. I don't have to. Oh, this is okay. So yeah, so if oh, Control Z actually works with IMGUI's controls, which is nice considering we don't have it in the editor. I'm still in Russian. But yeah, like I can obviously go back to fonts and like, let's go with that Gonzalez one. Once they've been loaded, they kind of stay loaded. So it's very quick to like switch between these. But that actually all gets bashed together into a single draw, which is pretty nice as well. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this devlog. Again, lots of exciting stuff. Those of you who do have access, patreon.com/thecherno. It's only $10 a month to help support this entire project. You will get access to all of this. You can check it out and you can learn from it. And also you'll be contributing to the actual development of Hazel as well. So it's amazing that we're able to achieve so much. I'm really, really grateful to the team as well. Lots of them being volunteers, of course, who are just volunteering their time to work as part of this project. I think that like you know, it's already amazing what we've achieved, but there's some really exciting stuff coming in the future as well. So yeah, I'm just generally excited right now. Thank you guys for watching. As I mentioned, this stuff will make its way back into Hazel 2D fairly soon, I think, because UI is probably not that soon in Hazel 2D. We still want to like do the 2D physics first and like the C# scripting, and then maybe UI at some point then, but it'll be entirely based on this current system. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Have a great day. Goodbye.